The small town of Ravenshade lay nestled between rolling hills, far removed from the hustle and bustle of the city. It was the perfect setting for my New Year's resolution to do something new every month. January had arrived, and the allure of exploring an obscure town had led me to Ravenshade. Little did I know that this decision would plunge me into a nightmarish tale that defied explanation. The town square, though quaint, exuded an air of abandonment. Weathered buildings with time-worn facades lined the narrow streets, casting long shadows in the dimming sunlight. Ravenshade seemed to have preserved an antiquated charm, yet an unsettling silence hung in the air. As I roamed the deserted streets, the chill of the winter evening sent shivers down my spine. The townspeople, if there were any left, remained hidden behind closed doors. My footsteps echoed eerily, and the creaking of an old windmill on the outskirts intensified the eerie ambiance. It was then that I heard a soft voice, almost drowned by the distant wind. I turned to find a young girl, her eyes wide with an inexplicable fear. Her long dark hair hung loosely around her shoulders, and her pale face seemed almost ghostly against the backdrop of the dying day. "Get out before sunset," she whispered urgently, her words barely audible. "Otherwise, you'll never leave." Before I could respond or seek clarification, she darted away into the fading light, her silhouette disappearing like a phantom. Bewilderment gripped me, but curiosity prevailed. The warning seemed like a product of local superstition, a tale spun to scare off outsiders. I brushed it off and continued my exploration, determined to unravel the mysteries Ravenshade held. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the cobblestone streets, the town underwent a transformation. The silence turned into a symphony of whispers, indistinct murmurs that seemed to originate from the very walls of the ancient buildings. The atmosphere thickened, and an oppressive weight settled over Ravenshade. Ignoring the growing unease, I wandered toward the outskirts, where the windmill stood sentinel against the darkening sky. The air became charged with an inexplicable energy, and the whispers intensified, now forming coherent sentences that spoke of a hidden past and the consequences of trespassing into the town's secrets. I found an old inn, its sign barely visible in the dim light. The door creaked open with reluctance as I entered. The interior, though dilapidated, exuded a peculiar charm. Dust danced in the air as I explored the lobby, and a faded portrait of Ravenshade's former mayor hung crookedly on the wall. The innkeeper, an elderly man with sunken eyes, greeted me with a weary smile. "You're new here, aren't you?" he asked, his voice carrying a heaviness that mirrored the town's atmosphere. I nodded, unable to shake off the feeling that I had walked into a story that refused to be written. He sighed, as if burdened by a secret. "Strange things happen in Ravenshade after sunset. You do well to heed the warning of the girl who whispered to you." It was then that I saw her, the young girl who had warned me. She stood beneath the flickering street lamp, her eyes hollow and filled with a sorrow that transcended the mortal realm. "You didn't listen," she whispered, her voice carrying an otherworldly echo. "The town has claimed you now." I attempted to respond, but the air thickened, and a cold wind swept through the square. The shadows coalesced, taking on ethereal forms that seemed to mock the living. Desperation set in as I realized that Ravenshade was not just a town, it was a prison for those who dared to defy its ancient curse. As the clock struck midnight, the world around me warped and twisted. The town's history unfolded before my eyes. a tragic tale of betrayal, dark rituals, and a pact with an otherworldly force that demanded payment in souls. I found myself in the midst of a spectral congregation, the townspeople, long gone, trapped in a limbo between the living and the dead. The innkeeper, the mayor from the portrait, and the young girl were all there, their eyes vacant yet pulsating with an unnatural glow. "You are now one of us," the innkeeper intoned, his voice resonating through the ghostly gathering. "You have entered Ravenshade, and Ravenshade has entered you." I struggled against an unseen force, but it was futile. The spectral entities surrounded me, their whispers now a cacophony that reverberated through the town square. I was part of the cursed narrative, a character in a story that defied escape. Days turned into nights, and nights into eternity. The town, frozen in a perpetual state of twilight, held me captive. The once vibrant streets decayed into shadows, and the whispers became a haunting melody that echoed through the cobblestone alleys. The young girl, now a mere echo of her former self, approached me. "You were warned," she murmured, her voice carrying a melancholic tone. "But like others before you, you chose to defy the curse." The realization hit me with a force greater than any physical blow. Ravenshade was not just a town with a dark history, it was a living entity, a malevolent force that ensnared those who dared to unlock its secrets. As the years passed in the eternal twilight, I became a storyteller for the lost souls of Ravenshade. I whispered warnings to newcomers, hoping that one day someone would break the curse and free us from this spectral prison. And so, the cycle continued. The town claimed new victims, and I, a mere echo of my former self, awaited the arrival of the next unsuspecting soul. A pawn in Ravenshade's